What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about if Joker should be in Gotham Knights. Now, we talked about this before. I feel like this is almost a yearly or every 6-month kind of thing, but now we're talking about him in Gotham Knights. And no, honestly, though, there's a lot more to discuss, things that I have brought up, even with Degenerate J, when we did the collaborations. And I think just a lot new information, but new, prospect, basically, of why I think this is a very, very good idea, which is a spoiler, I'd say, for this video, that I'm on board with Joker being in this game. So we're going to talk about all of that right here. And really quickly, I know a lot of you guys already do this, but for those that don't, my Twitter handle is podcastnow15. If you guys don't already follow me over there, definitely a thing I recommend doing. The link for it will also be in the description below. I tend to interact with people quite a bit over there, tend to pitch you guys ideas. I personally have a lot of fun with Twitter. So again, podcastnow15 is my Twitter handle. So let's talk about this. So, again, in the Degenerate J collaborations, if you guys saw either of those, I talked about Joker quite a bit. And I said that I think Joker is a really good idea, specifically for this game because of what the story is. So, obviously, with any new story, with any new world, with any new universe, you have a chance of doing brand new things. So this Joker not only can be different, but he can look different. It could be a new voice actor, all of that kind of stuff, which is very, very exciting. And they have that chance, and they did that, obviously, with the 4 Gotham Knights. Even with Batman, you could say with Alfred, all of these characters, it's a chance of doing something brand new. And so that always excites me when talking about villains, right? We talked about that before, where really you look at all the villains that they could pick from that they've already used, even just the ones they've used in the Arkham world before. If they want to use some of them for this game, they have a chance of making them really cool. Mr. Freeze looks very, very similar to what he looked like in Arkham City, but I guarantee you he is going to have a lot of differences, and that's awesome. And I really do think that's a good thing. And so you can do that with everybody, including the Joker. Now, with the story, this specific story, we didn't know it was going to go down this way, right? So when we've talked about Joker in these games in the past, we've said, okay, well, the rumor was he's going to make his way into the main story. In fact, the rumor was, remember, he's going to make his way into the main story to help Batman. So I almost wonder if, that could technically still be true, and maybe he helps bring Batman back, or maybe he knows something. We'll have to see, but even if they just, by the way, it's a difficult thing to say. Do I want him in the main story and as like a side thing? I think guaranteed for a side villain, I have zero problems with. In fact, I'm a promoter of it. I think you absolutely need to do that. In terms of the main story, look, if he's not the main villain, then I don't have a problem. I think the Court of Owls should. If you want to have a couple other villains in there, you can. But Joker, and if Joker is one of those other villains, I guess that's fine. I just really don't want him to take the spotlight. I don't see how it's bad at all that he can't have his, I think it's a good thing if he has his own little hour and a half long side quest little arc thing that you go through. I think that's perfectly fine as long as he doesn't steal the spotlight of the main story. That's pretty much where I stand on Joker. And again, with what we know about what this game is going to be, look, there's going to be conversation with these characters based off of who you're playing as. Now, I've had problems with that, and I still have problems with that, but to see what Joker's like in a world post-Batman when he's not there is actually super interesting. And in fact, like I said in past videos, it is, I think, one of the cooler things with any of these villains. I wonder how much they'll, lean into it, but I think if they wanted to lean into it, it would be really cool. Remember, Batman and this family, it's been like 15 or so years, they said, that they've been fighting crime. I mean, they've kept it under control for a long time. Now that Batman's gone, I want to see the city kind of react to it. I want to see these villains specifically react to it. We've never seen that in the game. What is Joker like if Batman is dead? What the heck is going on with him? You know what I mean? Is he even all that much of a threat? Has he lost some of his excitement because there's really he lost kind of the other side to him? That's a kind of thing that I really, because again, the villain thing, the thing that excites me the most is always going to be story. The thing that excites me the most for Batman games or for DC games, I think will always be story. For the most part, any game ever, the story is going to be one of, if not the main thing I get pumped for. It doesn't have to be, but even for a game like this, the story is my number one thing. So that is what pulls me into the Joker. I want to see what he's like without Batman. And with that being said, look, I don't love the gameplay. Okay, just the difference of gameplay that they've done. I think it does. What I will give them credit for though is it does highlight some powers or abilities or move sets that we haven't necessarily seen in the past. So even like the Mr. Freeze fight, like there's always going to be, and I actually mean that in more than one way. I actually mean both the Mr. Freeze fights. The one in Gotham Knights obviously is very different than the one we faced in Arkham City, but you do see similarities in the way Mr. Freeze fights, and obviously that's going to be the case. Like, he's going to have his weapons, he's going to have his moves, and again, they're going to be different, but they're very, very, you know what I mean? They're completely different kinds of fights just because of the actual gameplay. I love the Arkham City. I think that's one of, if not the best boss fight in all of the Arkham games, is the Mr. Freeze thing. Just something about it is very, very special to me. So again, like I'm worried about it in Gotham Knights, but at the same time, it is a chance to do things differently. Like, I do like some of the stuff we saw with Mr. Freeze in the Gotham Knights mission, and we know that that's only halfway through his story. That I would assume, I wouldn't guarantee it, but I would assume that's not going to be the last time we fight him. Maybe we fight him halfway, maybe we beat him, but then he escapes, and then we have one final boss fight with him at the end of his story arc. So maybe you have to fight them a couple times. Bottom line is, with Joker, and that's another thing too, and I thought about this, I don't know if I've said this in videos, you can have villains, but I wonder if you could even attach villains with those villains. Now, you could say, would that be like overkill? But my point would be, you could have a Harley quest that's an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours long, or you could have Joker, and you could have them separate, or Joker can combine Harley. Do you know what I mean? Like, you have to do the Joker stuff to also get Harley in there, and you can maybe combine other people. I mean, pick two villains that you think closely, are with each other, and put them into something, and then maybe they can have a story beat on their own. You know what I mean? They may not do that. We don't know yet, right? And we also don't know what we just talked about on Wednesday. We don't know how many villains are just going to be in this game flat out. But that's another thing to think about, is that if we're fighting Joker, maybe if they want to make it into multiple stages, where say there's like 4 or 5 missions, maybe at mission 2 or 3, somewhere in the middle, maybe you fight Harley, and you can introduce her into the story over the first couple missions. You fight her, you get into Joker. I think that the potential with this game and with these villains, again, I am worried about, quite a few things, but the potential for me does outweigh it. Like, I would say more, I know people will say all I've ever been is negative, but I think I've been more positive on this game than negative, while completely understanding, because I know, a big chunk of my fan base, they are anti this game, and I think that's completely fine. I think that's completely cool, and I'm going to give them, the time of day, and I'm going to discuss that as well. But I'd say overall, I've been more positive on this game than negative. So I think that there are things that worry me, but the potential, especially for villains in this game, are very, very high, because what you can do story-wise, not just with the Gotham Knights, because I would be interested to see, okay, how does Joker talk to and do stuff with one versus the other? The concern there is there even a difference? Because there should be, but if there's not, then that becomes a problem to me. So there's that, there's that one thing. How does he fight? How does he look? How does he act? And then how does he act, again, not just with the Gotham Knights, but how is he acting in general? What's his plan? Like, Mr. Freeze, he wants to freeze the city, and we saw him build like that reactor and all that stuff. Like, that's his story beat. Okay, that's what his narrative is. What's Joker's? You know what I mean? Like, what's he actually doing? And then again, do these villains make their way into the main story, or do they not? Do they do basically what they did with Arkham Knight and keep them, for the large part, separate? And in fact, I think completely separate, right? None of the mission wheel, the side villains, none of them made their way into the main story. You had them, but then you also had the main threat of Scarecrow, the Arkham Knight, and then Joker in your head. And they kept it very separate. Now, again, that was Rocksteady. This is Warner Bros. Montreal. So we'll have to see how they balance things. But if they maybe did, and again, it depends on how many villains. Because if there's like 4, 5, 6 villains, that's not all that much. Maybe there are these side missions, but then you do introduce them in the main story. But if there's like 30 of them, or 20 or 25 of them, like we talked about a few days ago, then, again, how much do you balance that? So I think even in that, by the way, if we're talking about like, should Joker be in it, I think it's an easy yes. And I also think, because if we go along with the line of thinking that, say there's like 20 villains in this game, and it takes an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours max to beat each of them, okay, their entire story thing, I mean, what's the problem with that? I know people don't want Joker just because he's been overused, but if he's one of 20 and they're all similar lengths of time in terms of beating them, I think that, you know what I mean, that I think pleases people that want him. You're not overkilling, you know what I mean? You're not shoving him in our face. He's got nothing to do with the main story. I think it's kind of and you get to, again, you get to see a brand new Joker. What does he look like in this new, what does he look like on next gen? What does he look like in a brand new universe? What's his voice? You know, what's his voice actor? And then what the heck is he doing? Again, we also get to see movesets, like if we fight him, which would kind of be odd because, like, we're fighting Mr. Freeze, and then we're going to be fighting Joker. Like, how good is Joker even at fighting? So, like, you know, maybe we don't end up actually fighting him. We'll see. Again, there's possibilities there that I think are actually quite exciting. So, guys, let me know in the comments below. What do you think? Should Joker be in this game? Should he not? If he is in this game, would you like him to be in it how I described it? Do you want him to be in it more, less? Let me know in the comments below. As always, make sure you guys are subscribed to this YouTube channel, Podcast Now. Hit the bell icon so you guys know when all these videos go up. Like I said, if you guys aren't following me on Twitter, Podcast Now 15 is the Twitter handle. And thank you guys so much. You guys have been really, really supportive. I know this is kind of a dark time, like where there's not a lot, literally dark in terms of like no news. And I see a lot of other Arkham channels maybe struggling a little bit. I'm really happy that you guys have been very, very supportive of me. We're going to keep this series going every 2 to 3 days, a brand new video. And then whenever there's brand new news, you know, we'll talk about it. And then as the game gets closer, you know, month, 2 months, 3 months leading into the game, obviously we'll talk about it a lot more, okay? Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all on the next video.